Pennsylvania is known as the Keystone State. Why? Because it was central to the commerce, population, and politics of the 13 American colonies. And as you well know, Pennsylvania has played an outsized role in presidential politics for decades and will loom large in the midterms, with at least 3 hotly contested House races and possibly as many as 4. Quick reminder, Republicans currently hold 218 House seats. That's the slimmest majority possible. President Trump traveled to a Mack truck facility a bit west of Allentown this afternoon, knowing Republicans need to perform well in Pennsylvania. As you might recall, last night on this program, we reviewed new national CBS poll numbers on Trump, the Iran war, and his overall approval rating. Quick recap, 62% disapprove of Trump's performance, 38% approve. Also, 69% told us the Iran war was not worth the cost. 31% said it was. Again, those are national numbers. What about numbers in Pennsylvania? The new Franklin and Marshall College poll found 47% of Pennsylvanians consider that state to be on the wrong track. That same number, 47%, say they are worse off financially than they were a year ago. 35% of Pennsylvanians say the economy was their number one issue. And of those who said that, 42% favored Democrats over Republicans at 24%. Continuing on with that Franklin and Marshall College poll, 29% said the Pennsylvania economy was either excellent or good. 71% said it was fair or poor. That compares to 39% who said the state economy was excellent or good in March. Remember, that was just after the Iran war began. Lastly, that poll found Pennsylvanians favored Democrats in the midterms on a generic ballot question, which is pretty important, 47% to 35% over Republicans. All this in a state Trump carried by more than 120,000 votes in 2024. By far his best performance in 3 presidential runs. He lost Pennsylvania in 2020 and won it by a mere 44,000 votes in 2016. So Trump has a sales job to do in Pennsylvania and elsewhere for what it might be worth. And as he does that salesmanship job, it is becoming obvious day by day the disagreements with Iran over the meaning of the Memorandum of Understanding, well, those disagreements appear to be multiplying. And that adds a layer of confusion to what's been agreed to and what's still left to resolve. This includes nuclear inspections, Lebanon, sanctions, ballistic missiles, and the Strait of Hormuz. To help us with the politics, the salesmanship, and the Iran talks, we turn to Weijia Jiang at the White House. Weijia, let's start with inspectors inside Iran, which the vice president made a lot about yesterday. The president talked about that today.
That's right, Major. You remember Vice President Vance said it was the most exciting piece of the negotiations that he had in Switzerland with Iranian officials, because he said that Iran has agreed to allow those nuclear inspectors, those watchdogs, back into the country. Well, today we heard from Iran to say that they have not met with the agency in charge of it all and that there are no plans for inspections, prompting President Trump to publicly contradict the Iranians. And here's what he said.
They're wrong. They're wrong. They're wrong. They know they're wrong. They told us inside, and we have it down, 100% inspections. And if they were right, I'd cancel the meetings right now.
When will those inspectors actually be on the ground?
At the appropriate time. At the appropriate time. There's no rush, but they'll be on the ground at the appropriate time.
There is also a disagreement, Major, over how Iran can use its revenue that is new after the Treasury Department issued waivers for sanctions on Iranian oil, meaning that anyone who purchases it now does not have to face U.S. consequences for roughly 2 months. The president insists that any profits Iran makes will actually come back to the U.S., to American farmers, saying that Iran is going to purchase corn and soybeans because there is a humanitarian crisis in the country, which, of course, is true. But the Iranians say, look, that's not up to President Trump. We are going to spend the money how we want it, with the head of Iran's central bank saying they are under no obligation to purchase American agriculture products. So, Major, we are already seeing A lot of disagreement in public, which we typically don't when you're talking about such vulnerable negotiations. But we'll see how this plays out, because there's still roughly 2 months left to go on these talks.
And the talks and their future workability also vector off of Lebanon and Israel's presence in southern Lebanon, and whether or not the ceasefire between Hezbollah and Iranian proxy in southern Lebanon holds with Israel.
Absolutely. And there is disagreement there that has been ongoing, even though we know that the Israelis and Lebanese delegations continue to work this out with meetings in Washington. The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, just said a couple days ago that they are not going to be moving out of southern Lebanon, stressing that they need to maintain a security posture there. And when our Ed O'Keefe pressed President Trump about this, because Iran has made so clear that any ceasefire has to include Lebanon, the president said, I'm not going to tell you my plan, but he tried to reassure the American public that he has one, and that when it comes to Bibi, he also is able to make progress. But so far, Major, nothing that we have seen has amounted to concrete progress in terms of those troops from Israel withdrawing.
Weijia Jiang with all the details from the North Lawn of the White House. Weijia, as always, thank you so much. CBS News national security contributor Samantha Vinograd joins me now. Sam, always great to have you here. Get to the crux of this, if you could, please.
It's like a tale of two talks. We have Vice President Vance and other officials saying that everything is proceeding swimmingly and that Iran has agreed to basically all of the U.S. demands, including these critical inspections by the IAEA. And then we have Iran, Oman, and even Pakistan saying something very different. We now have discordancy not just on nuclear inspections, also on tolls or fees that could be charged in the Strait of Hormuz.
That's what the Iranians and the Oman government are going to be talking about in the not-too-distant future.
Certainly, and they issued a statement a few hours ago saying that they could look at any cost for services provided in the Strait. We have disagreement on whether ballistic missiles are going to be covered. And
right, the Prime Minister of Pakistan said today, I'm not going to care about that. Why should I worry about someone's self-defense capabilities or ballistic missile
other countries have them.
Other countries have them. Why can't Iran?
Which is half true. But in any case, there is also disagreement. Marco Rubio is in the region. He'll be going to a GCC meeting on whether Iranian-backed proxies in the region are going to be part of negotiations. So all across the board, it looks like this MOU was hammered out without a lot of tough conversations happening, and perhaps with a lot left open to interpretation. The problem is, Major, that President Trump is saying, if the Iranians don't play ball, I'm walking away and I'm going to re-engage in military operations. However, at the same time, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has just provided Congress with an $80 billion bill, basically, for this war. And President Trump has said just last week that this war is having such an impact on the economy that that's why he ended it. So I don't think the Iranians take it seriously.
Hoover.
Exactly.
His words, not mine. And that $80 billion request from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is a supplemental to basically provide things that have been launched in this war, to rebuild stockpiles that have clearly been fired down.
And it's also a little bit misleading because that $80 billion, even if Congress says, here you go.
Which is not clear it's going to do.
And the Senate just voted to restrict Trump's
war powers,
which is a rare rebuke by the Senate.
50 to 48.
But even if Congress hands Trump a check for $80 billion, that masks the reality that it is going to take years to rebuild weapon stockpiles, even if all the money comes in now. So the true costs of this war are really hard to put into figures in a bank account. And so at this point, President Trump is feeling a lot of economic pressure today because of the war. He has said publicly that it's too expensive and having too much of a downside risk to the economy to go back. And the Iranians seem to have gotten a lot out of this financially. I know there's a lot of focus on the $300 billion reconstruction account, but as our colleague Weijia just mentioned, just waiving sanctions on Iranian
which happened
oil
yesterday.
Exports. Yes, a general license by the U.S. Treasury Department is going to lead to billions of U.S. dollars going to Iran. And there's a lot of he said, she said right now, but the proof is in the pudding. Is Iran getting paid in U.S. dollars or not? And what account is that going to?
Right. And to be clear, that's not U.S. taxpayer dollars. That's transacted oil sales in the essential currency of the globe, which is U.S. dollars?
It is not U.S. government money, but to be clear, Iran today, as President Trump is saying, the oil is flowing. That is money that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, a designated foreign terrorist organization, is getting, billions of dollars that it's getting, that it was not getting before this war. Why? Because it is a state-sponsored terror. It has an illegal nuclear program. It uses ballistic missiles illegally. It engages in human rights abuses, and I could go on. So Iran is richer today than before the war, despite the fact that they've done nothing better since the war started.
Sam Vinograd, great stuff as always. Thank you.